Hello and welcome to Default Assault, where we take on everything by default. I'm your host, Demosthenes. With me, as always, is Mr. Kyle Nash. How's it going, Kyle?
I'm doing well. I'm ready to engage anything by default.
Yeah, me too. We're gonna make it so, and boy, are we gonna make it so. So we're sitting down to film once again our regular Default Assault for Thursday, and some people sent me this story and asked me to talk about it. There have been a few other YouTubers, I'm sure, have already talked about this.
Well, before we get down that path, I have to ask a question. If you make a bad pun in this episode, do I get to say, "Shut up, Wesley"?
Shut up, Wesley.
Well, it would only be for a really
So
bad
I'm going to
joke.
hear it like 80 times. So great.
Shut up, Wesley.
So if you haven't heard, you're about to hear some of the best news ever. Patrick Stewart has announced that he's coming back as Jean-Luc Picard for a Next Generation spin-off taking place some 20 years after the Next Generation film Nemesis. I'll be honest, I did not like Nemesis. I thought that was a very poor way for the Next Generation to go out. Hearing that Patrick Stewart is coming back, possibly leading to a greater exit down the line, I'm excited for it. Jean-Luc Picard, in my opinion, is one of the more formative role models that I had growing up. I used to watch Next Generation with my dad. And speaking of today, we have so very few good male role models in media. To have somebody like Jean-Luc Picard come back, I think is tremendous. The episodes that really still grab me are the ones that take the morality of Picard and put it to the test. Episodes like The Drumhead or Measure of a Man. Taking a character with such ethics and putting him in moral quandaries is it's just fascinating, and it takes an actor with the chops of Patrick Stewart to be able to pull something like that off and make it as effective as it is.
In the overall stretch of Star Trek stuff, if you don't have Picard, do you see Sisko doing his thing? Does that have the same impact if you don't have Picard preceding Sisko?
That's an interesting question. I think that the route from Picard to Sisko is a far shorter route than from Kirk to Picard, because Picard was very different from Kirk.
Right.
In many ways, when people ask me who my favorite captain is, I would always say, well, Kirk is a guy that everybody would like to be, but Picard is the guy that we should aspire to be. I think that it's very easy for me to say that Picard definitely laid the groundwork for a character like Sisko. Sisko, in many ways, takes a lot of the best elements of Kirk and Picard, but adds.
Yes.
There's a more realistic sense to his calls as a captain. A lot of times that he goes beyond the moral choice to get to the outcome that is needed in the time of war. It would have been interesting to see how Jean-Luc Picard would have played in a war setting.
Well, and the closest you get to that is First Contact against the Borg, I'm sure. And at the end of the day, Sisko gets it for me because his middle name is Lafayette. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I just kind of see similarities in those characters, but there are certain places where the moral quandaries faced, you see Sisko toe over the line, whereas Picard, I don't think would.
Let's get back to the topic at hand. So you would think that everybody would be excited, especially if you're a Star Trek fan. You'd be excited to have Patrick Stewart come back as Jean-Luc Picard, right? So this article came out on NBCnews.com. Of all places. NBC, the channel that first aired Star Trek back in the 1960s. Now CBS is airing Star Trek. I wonder why there's some animosity. So, headline: New Star Trek reboot starring Patrick Stewart is CBS's latest all-access offering. But who's the audience? Is that a rhetorical question?
We watched the first couple episodes of Discovery and were less than impressed. So if you want to be a little skeptical about what they might be doing in this all-access format, you have plenty of reason to do so.
The show is a dream come true for many Next Generation fans. So you answered your own question, okay? But something of a retreat from the progressivism of Star Trek Discovery. So this is written by Annie Bundle, to give her credit, because I'm going to read a little bit of this. So the article reads that CBS's small screen revival continues. He'll be reprising his role. It's a dream come true for a generation of Star Trek fans who grew up on the rebooted concept, as well as the spin-offs Deep Space Nine and Voyager. But it also represents a retreat by CBS from the progressivism of its first series on all-access Star Trek Discovery.
Good.
There are no public scripts yet. Well, duh. It was just announced the other day. He also hinted that his character, who was captain of the latest iteration of the USS Enterprise the last time he was on screen, might no longer be in command or even part of Starfleet. Listen, I don't care where you put him, as long as you don't make him a hermit on a planet and make him milk anything. If it's Picard making Picard family wine for a entire damn season, I would watch the shit out of that. TNG arrived in 1987 when the country's conservative turn under President Ronald Reagan was feeling more and more entrenched. The show championed liberal values, but the cast was more than... Okay, well, this is the thing that really pisses me off about a lot of articles nowadays is... Do they even have editors on staff? Anyway, the show championed liberal values, but its cast was more than 75% white and male. And the production team behind it was 100% both. Untrue, by the way. There were female producers and writers behind Star Trek Next Generation. So I don't understand why we're saying 100%. That's not a real number. So with liberals feeling increasingly under attack again, a TNG reboot feels timely, perhaps even comforting. It is, in other words, the opposite of an authoritarian dystopia like The Handmaid's Tale. As a bonus, Stewart himself is openly liberal, championing women in the Me Too era, discussing the lasting effects of domestic violence on society, and campaigning for equality for all. He's the rare A-list celebrity who remains unsullied by scandal and hypocrisy.
As shows go in general to match their historical era, Star Trek in general has casts that are breaking grounds. Okay, you find me a black chick prominent in a show other than Uhura at the time. Oh, I'm sure it's there. It's just not
Star
as
Trek
prominent.
had one of the first interracial, if not the first, there's some debate on that, the first interracial kiss in television history. Martin Luther King himself told Nichelle Nichols that when she was thinking about leaving the show, to stay on the show because it was important that black women be represented in a point of power on TV.
Yeah, you make a great point
Star
with
Trek
that kiss. You beat me
has
to
always
it.
been progressive.
I mean, hell, it's Roddenberry's vision. Just look like, you know, I know the joke as I've heard it made, I don't necessarily buy it, but the joke I hear made is that, you know, the Federation is essentially space commies. Now, I don't believe that to be true, obviously, but you know, it's definitely a whole lot of liberal ideas, a lot of inclusion, a lot of you do whatever you want. We're going to find space because peace. Dude, I don't know how much more liberal it gets.
Beyond race, all right? Let's talk about ethnicity, right? In the 1960s, heart of the Cold War, they had freaking Chekhov, a Russian, on deck. All of them working together. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if you're black, white, male, female, anything under the sun. You were treated as an individual, and based on the qualities of your personal skills and ideals.
Correct, because the enemies in that particular situation were other races. You didn't have time for infighting. Hell, it even expanded beyond humans. You want to talk stuff in DS9. Even Garrick and Ducat had to get together and team up at times to overcome a common foe. And it's just that theme that exists, that humanity has realized that they are one entity and need to stick together in order to survive. When you're facing those as powerful as Borg, or earlier in history they had some run-ins with the Romulans, whatever. And in order to do that, you have to overtly say, hey, these people aren't supposed to like each other, but it goes well. I mean, let's not even forget about Takati Sulu being involved here in that day. Asian actors, what are those? I thought you only needed them for World War II films, right?
Well, it's also interesting.
Come on.
I mean, if you look at the end game of the original series. Their biggest villain of the week were the Klingons, the barbarian, warlike race you could never make peace with, and yet in their true final swan song, Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, they make peace. Kirk, who comes across as very bigoted in that film, puts aside his own feelings for the greater good and bridges that gap between these two races, which probably goes against what Star Trek Discovery believes in by ascribing that all the Klingons are Trump supporters, because Kirk is eventually just going to bring everybody together.
Star Trek VI is easily the best Kirk Star Trek movie not called Wrath of Khan. I was about ready to get you going there.
I love Star Trek VI. I can debate it. This is what the article continues to say. That more likely CBS is using the nostalgic reboot to placate the white male demographic that felt alienated by Discovery, a show which was legitimately diverse and therefore immediately controversial. A show focused on an aging white male hero known for his calm equilibrium and wisdom is a sharp U-turn from Discovery, which stars a diverse crew focusing on a young woman of color. After 50 years of paying lip service to equality and a future where sexism and racism were problems of the past, this new series, Discovery, features a cast that matches the rhetoric. Lip service. Okay. Unless they're making a really good pun about the previously mentioned first interracial kiss.
Lip service being a really good pun.
Shut up, Wesley.
Listen, man, I don't often discount people, but when you are taking jobs from some of my fellow cohorts and stealing money from other people who deserve it because of the work and research they do, if you haven't done your research any better than this, I have no place for you. This isn't about politics in our nation right now. This is about somebody else who doesn't know what they're doing, trying to use their platform to spew straight ignorance. I don't care what side you're on. When you're this wrong, you're just doing it for the sake of causing conflict, period.
I'm with you. This coming from NBC, this kind of article, in a way, it downplays some of that channel's own achievements with Star Trek, the show. It's there are a lot of politics, internal politics behind this hit piece, and it very much, I believe, is a hit piece. But they're missing Star Trek. I mean, we've had female captains, Janeway. We had black captain Sisko, who many can argue is the best of the captains. I would welcome that.
Favorite.
Although if you're going to be arguing between especially Picard and Sisko, whoever there are no losers except maybe Janeway. This is a series. Star Trek in general is a series that gets it right when it comes to a positive outlook for the future. You can make some arguments that, well, there are a couple of scenes from, and especially the last episode of the original series, if I remember correctly, Turnabout Intruder, where they had this weird rule that women couldn't be starship captains, etc. Yeah, there was definitely room to grow. But we're also talking about a show from the 1960s. I tend to look at the overall accomplishments that it did at the time, where it pushed the envelope quite a bit. By the time even TNG, there are a few early episodes of TNG, Code of Honor, which are questionable by today's standards. And you know what? There are going to be episodes of Discovery 10 years down the line. They're going to be questionable by those standards. This is a show that it doesn't root itself in divisiveness. Whether when you look at Picard, he is the type of person that we should all aspire to be, regardless of our own race or backgrounds. When they hired Patrick Stewart to be captain, there was discussion about whether or not he should wear a wig because he's bald. And you know what the response to that was? In the future, nobody's going to care if you're bald.
That sounds like Gene Roddenberry, sure enough.
It's what's on the inside. I sound like a goddamn Hallmark card.
Which is basically kind of what Star Trek is, but you want to tell me that it's anti-progressive. Shut your damn face, millennial.
You know, I personally am holding out hope. I am excited. I'm a little cautious with anything that gets rebooted, but if this is quite honestly the first true reboot, I am thrilled for. At least finally a Star Trek that's set in the future rather than a goddamn prequel or reimagining. Let us know what you guys think about this in the comments below. I know it's a little bit more of a controversial topic, and whether you agree or disagree, you know, just we're open for a chat. Hit us up and check out To Fall Assault every Thursday, where life is hilarious by default.